This video is a composite of interviews with workplace anthropologists who have conducted generative and applied research in workplaces. Some of those workplaces are in government, others in business settings. A few are embedded in those organizations as employees, while others are consultants in organizations, and their specific skills may be in strategy, design, or innovation research, but all consider the range of skills they learn to apply and the contexts in which they apply those skills. These skills may be specifically anthropological, but more often span multiple disciplines as they learn to work across disciplinary boundaries with a variety of practitioners. They have learned the value of anthropology and offer suggestions for how to stay engaged as anthropologists.
It's often not up to the anthropologist to make the determination about whether or not the organization will implement recommendations that the anthropologist developed or developed in conjunction with the people from the particular organization. I think that is something that it's not the failure necessarily of the anthropologist. The anthropologist may be inexperienced or may not do the right thing at the right time, but I think the bottom line is that it really is up to the organization to carry through with the implementation. The anthropologist can be there as a guide, as a coach, as a source of expertise, as a subject matter expert on best ways to get something implemented given the culture of that particular organization. But in fact, it is the implementation belongs to the organization, not to the anthropologist. So while we'd all like to say, gosh, every single one of my projects resulted in a success, in other words, the companies or the nonprofits did what we suggested, that is very unlikely to happen. Sometimes anthropologists are called in to make a point that somebody in the organization has figured out they need some data to advance whatever case they're trying to make to their senior management.
Say, we want a survey to measure something. You can't accept that at face value. It may end up being the right solution, but the only way you're going to find that out is to take the time to fully understand the issues they're facing and ask them questions and make them answer it. It's not just you taking the time, but getting them to invest a little bit of time in understanding the situation. Why is this a problem? How do they know it's a problem? Ask as many questions as necessary to fully understand, and only then can you come up with a proposed solution to the problem. So I think those were valuable lessons to learn earlier on in my career, and it's proven to be worthwhile. No matter if it's unpaid time or not, it's worthwhile to spend time really understanding that to come up with the right solution.
You're paid to make changes, in the firm, in the way that it works, that will affect bottom line type stuff. So that I would say, and it's also it's an environment which is challenging in many different ways. So will require different broad skill sets, social competence, communications competence, research competence. So depending on on what kind of a firm or what kind of a field, it could be lots of sort of social interaction competence. You may be in like we are here, multilingual, multicultural firms. I mean, it's very fun. So, but somehow the buzz has to be also in that challenge. It can't, and that's also something maybe that's true. If you if it hurts to throw away good ideas and good insights, then a business career is not the right one, because you're going to sort of throw away an awful lot of them. A few will get through, depending on how hard you push. You can get a few through, but there's just lots and lots of stuff that you'll just have to somehow say goodbye to. So if that robs you of energy, then it's probably a bad location. If the challenge of of bringing that into structures and processes, areas of the firm that have the sort of inertia based on success, hopefully, if that challenge gives you energy, then do it. In this position, I've been able to answer certain questions about the discipline, which were interesting to me right at the beginning. Even though I knew I knew anthropology was useful for doing product development, I still wondered, can I take what I learned in my PhD, totally different research setting, and apply that here and create value here? It's very different when you're doing research, for example, with people who have a lot more power than you do. Anyway, I was able to answer that question. And then the second question was, can I take the skills and experience and background I have in anthropology and in other areas, but in anthropology now, and create value, not just like I said earlier, not just at the product service level, but at the strategic level? Is that possible? It was sort of an intellectual curiosity, or something related to the discipline. And so I've had a chance to answer that question. So, there's been lots of, it's given me a chance to answer questions, of course, about myself, but also some interesting questions, I think, about the discipline. So it's very fun. It's been very fun.
And I found a traditional Austrian company, medium-sized, with 150 employees, and no relation to social science at all. And I was not acquainted with the organization before either, but I was there, ending up there due to a recommendation. And after 2 initial interviews, they agreed upon this quest of research and this adventure. And they opened up the access, and I spent 5 months in total over a period of 1.5 years within the company as a participant observer, meaning that I had the whole range of moments where I was only observing to moments where I was fully participating. And it was an electrician company, so trust there was something vital, because if you could not trust your fellow colleagues, you might end up, in worst case, even dying due to a mistake that happened when you would switch off the high voltage power, for example. And so trust there was of higher significance. And so this was quite an interesting organization to do the research in, because the people there had a notion of trust and an awareness of trust. And so I was educated of how to lay cables and how to install distribution boxes so that I could really participate within the field. And I've been out with the guys building sites externally, but also in the summer heat, which we have here in Austria, which can range up to 30, 35 degrees. And by doing that, I quickly was able to gain the trust of the informants, that I'm not just the passive scientist who's there and watching them, but they kind of found quite appealing that I was putting aside all my writing tools and put on my hands and whatever was needed to be done.
Yesterday we were working on a project to look at settlement services for newcomers to Canada. And one of the 2 things that I pointed out is I said that, first of all, one of the things you need to do if you're bringing people through this process is that there are several stages where people just don't know what to do next. They're uncertain. They're basically in a liminal state, to draw on Turner and Van Gennep. And of course, as you know, ritual processes, we use ritual as a technology to help people get through from one status to another, to be separated and then be reintegrated into society. And if you create those touchstones for people, those periods of uncertainty are still going to be there, but you feel less afraid because you have a way of integrating that way of thinking. And when I brought that into the table, and they went, that's how we're going to, and they said, that helps us to connect the dots. And they got really excited. They said, that's why we hired an anthropologist. We like, and then that helped other people think about, and then we talk, and then, so it really kind of blends into that. And they view my anthropological experience and my research experience as extremely valuable, as they view everybody's experience. So what we do in the settlement, in the design challenge, there's been 2 before. This one is on settlement design, dealing with how we deal with newcomers, including refugees and permanent residents in Canada, and what problems they encounter. And so what they've done is they took from IRCC, they took from across the organization, from communications, from policy, and from other branches, and they pulled these people together, both from the head office in Ottawa, the Windsor and Toronto offices, and Vancouver and Surrey offices as well, and brought everyone together to do field work in Toronto, Kingston, and in Vancouver and Surrey in British Columbia. And in all those cases, to help people from these various parts of the organization to do field work, to interview service organizations, refugees, other newcomers, other people, organizations that work with newcomers, to see what people really experience, what people find that works really well, and what doesn't work well, what helps them move forward in Canada, what holds them back. And that experience of a week of field work was very, very emotional and very powerful, because many people heard very tough things, both about their government and about the people trying to make it in Canada. And that experience, pulling together as teams, where people who even were each other's bosses, nope, those titles are gone, we remove all that, and everyone works together. Then they come back, and in the second week we do analysis, and they bring back what they've learned. And the big thing is they learn that government can be changed. Policy and rules, they're all made up. They're important, but they're constructed, right? Like almost everything about human cultures is constructed, and we can change it. Yes, it takes time, yes, it's difficult, but it can be done. And so what that does is that infuses this cultural change.
Number one, the first place where I saw it working was that when I saw people doing the field work, people were hearing experiences, and some people, of course, were crying. They could feel it, they could see their own children, they could see their own things, and they could say, we can change this, we've got to change this, we've got to do something. That I saw as a success because, of course, as anthropologists, when we engage with people, yes, we have to sort of try to understand things and be a little bit dispassionate, but we engage. The other time I saw them get it was when we went through all the analysis, but it was on the last day of the analysis, at the end of the third week, when they all acted out the scenario. So here's what it's like when a refugee comes and tries to deal with a service organization. Here's our IRC acts. And they acted out the roles of government and all those parts. And when they did that, they nailed it. They saw, everyone laughed, went, all at the same time. Like they saw and they connected the dots.
Today, the elevator pitch around it is usually they are externally facing. So our customers are other businesses. So usually if I am doing research, it is, with particular types of people in businesses that are either our customers or that, we would like to be our customers or have some type of work they do or behavior that we're interested in. That's both given me lots of opportunity to observe internal things. And I'll go back to a more recent project I was on. And I guess all of them were in some sense under this broad rubric of innovation. But you start looking internally. And I was asked by the product manager to do some additional research around some of the concepts. Then he asked me to do stuff around designing end-to-end experience. Now, what I was really doing was not necessarily trying to do complete customer journeys that we think of with end-to-end experience. It was finding places where stuff was falling between the cracks of, that didn't have ownership internally, or the ownership was spread across different departments in such a way that things weren't going to be done well. So I spent a good year or so trying to finesse some, ways of us doing some, not so much the experience of the product, but, how are you going to get help from within the product? And that entailed, I've been choreographing internal stakeholders and encouraging people to think about doing things differently. And it really exposed a lot of internal workings in that way. The biggest thing to be thinking about, and maybe it has to do with where I am in my career, I think there's a couple things. One is, the academic jobs don't come out of the woodwork, but neither do these. So I've certainly, if somebody's coming to me to talk about a job because this is their fallback from academia, I'm not very interested these days. Even though there's a lot of us who've been out for a while who did come straight out of academia, and not to say you can't come straight out of academia, but we don't want to see somebody who's doing this because it's going to be hard to get an academic job. You want to see somebody who wants to do this because they can show on their resume or interview that this is what they want to do, and that they know what, and that they can talk to why the skills that they have, what they've learned in their PhD program or whatever. So it's very important to think about in terms of your skill set and how that will translate into this other world. And I do use skill set broadly, because another danger I've seen, and this has even been, say, in maybe, I'm very involved in EPIC, in the EPIC environment, is getting overly concerned. I don't want to say being overly concerned with being an anthropologist. Certainly, I feel like some of my secret sauce is the social science perspective I bring. There's a lot of design researchers out there. They bring a fantastic other secret sauce. So, understanding those skills and understanding what, say, differentiates you as an anthropologist with social science training, but to also be able to grow bigger than that. That if you want to grow in your career beyond being a user researcher, you have to then start to say, how can I apply this in other ways? What other skills do I have beyond I can go talk to people and really understand? So I'd also encourage people to think how to grow beyond being a user researcher.
Last year and a half or so of grad school, when I started really diving into this field of user experience design and trying to build up my resume and a bit of a portfolio to land a job, I was diving, feet first, right, into this whole, as much as I could into this whole kind of industry and things like that. And I've stayed in. I think it is really important because it's kind of, I don't know. For me, it's a lot. You kind of be able to kind of go back and understand. Okay, well, what's some of the theories or concepts that I can use, and like I said, just understanding how technology works in people's everyday lives and things like that. There's a huge need for anthropologists to contribute to those discussions, I think. But at the same time, it seems like you can easily get disconnected from the discipline and how concepts and theories are evolving. So I haven't been to the AAAs in a few years as kind of like the hallmark of staying in touch with the discipline. And I think that's part of it too, is kind of the different roles you take on, right? You kind of need to get some experience in training and things like that, and these other things, right? So I did all these Scrum workshops, right, for this software development methodology called Agile, right? So learning all these other different kinds of concepts and methodologies that are out there, but at the same time being able to still kind of bring that perspective, I think, is really important. And I think a way that I stay in touch is talking with some of my colleagues and things like that. And a lot of people I've been talking to lately have been trying to make the same transition from maybe an academic career, or trying to figure out what career they do want, and then once they kind of find out user experience design, I've been kind of talking with people through that as well. But then a lot of the more kind of blog and other kinds of social media kind of writings that anthropologists are increasingly contributing. Since I'm not part of a university and don't have great access to academic journals, that's a problem, right? That I can really have very limited access to the newest books or journal articles that come out, other than titles and sometimes abstracts, or sometimes full access if it's an open access journal or something like that, or if you can just find a PDF on somebody's ResearchGate page or something like that. So that's been challenging to try. I'm trying to stay up to date on a certain topic or trying to explore a new topic. So I think a lot of it comes from those kinds of more kind of popular kind of social media blog articles like that.
One of the most important things that I think young anthropologists starting out, particularly in the applied and practicing world, need to think about is staying in touch with the discipline. That can be pretty important for anthropologists considering any kind of work, but it's complicated when it comes to practitioners and applied anthropologists. Staying in touch can be really expensive. Association memberships, even in SFAA, are pricey, and once you lose your student status, the cost goes up, even when there's a sliding scale involved. I think it's important for junior folks to realize that it may be okay to take a 1 or 2 year hiatus from membership, but then they really need to start budgeting so that they can maintain those connections. But I do think it's really important to have a plan over the first 5 years of your career for how you're going to eventually build to the point where you can start to maintain those connections. Otherwise, you're going to become disconnected. Your value to the organization that you're working in is going to diminish over time, and your ability to reach out and get new information is going to be minimalized. So it may be tough, but it is absolutely worth doing.